Welcome to The Explainer. All right, we are diving right in today because we have a story of sheer survival, massive geological upheavals, and incredible human resilience. We're going to explore the prehistoric origins of India. Now, when we typically think of Indian history, we usually start with the ancient empires or maybe the Indus Valley civilization. But today, we are going back much, much further. We're looking at an immense 50 million year geological and human history scale, unpacking a narrative hidden in ancient DNA, fossilized bones, and dark caves. This is a story you rarely find in standard history textbooks. So, to really set the stage here, we've got to ask a pretty fundamental question. Who actually ruled India before humans were even in the picture? Well, to answer that, we have to completely reimagine the map of the world. Tens of millions of years before humans even existed, let alone arrived in Asia, India wasn't attached to the continent. It was a massive, drifting, desolate island that broke off from the Gondwana supercontinent about 90 million years ago. And it was teeming with giant, terrifying beasts. It was a brutal world where physical power was the absolute law. Here's our chronological roadmap for this epic journey today. We'll start with India's tectonic birth, trace the arrival of the first ancient humans, navigate the Toba volcanic winter, track Homo sapiens, follow the path from caves to cities, and finally we'll unravel the Sinali chariot mystery. All right, let's start with part one, India's tectonic birth, literally the collision that changed the world.
Picture this. You've got this massive landmass, acting like a giant drifting island crossing the Tethys Sea. And when it finally slammed into the Eurasian plate, wow, it wasn't just a minor bump. The sheer force of that tectonic impact completely swallowed the Tethys Sea. The pressure was so incredibly intense that the Earth's crust literally buckled upwards, reaching toward the clouds, and birthed the towering Himalayas. And here is why this is absolutely crucial. That new mountain range acted like a colossal shield. It totally re-engineered Asia's entire climate system. It blocked the monsoon winds that used to just pass through, triggering the seasonal monsoon rains we still have today. Melting ice formed the mighty Ganga and Yamuna rivers, and over millions of years, what was once just barren rock was completely transformed into a lush, fertile paradise.
But as I mentioned, this newly formed paradise was no walk in the park. It was extremely dangerous. You had creatures like the stegodon walking around. Think of them as the great-grandfathers of modern elephants, but sporting colossal 10-foot tusks. The ground literally shook with every step they took. And the rivers? They weren't just full of crocodiles. They were dominated by the hexaprododon. We're talking about hippo-like beasts the size of literal trucks, with jaws so strong they could chew right through solid rock. Every single bush hid a lethal threat. So, to survive in this prehistoric paradise, you needed immense physical power. Brains definitely did not rule yet. Brawn did. Moving on to Section 2, the first ancient humans and the arrival of Homo erectus. So we just talked about India breaking off from Gondwanaland 90 million years ago, and that massive Eurasian collision 50 million years ago. Now, let's zoom all the way in to 1.5 million years ago. Right into this brutal, monster-filled jungle, the very first sparks of human intelligence arrive. Down near modern-day Chennai, in a place called Edaram Pakam, archaeologists actually found incredibly sharp, deliberately engineered stone tools. Then, fast forward to 1982. Over in the Narmada Valley, a paleontologist named Arun Sanakia discovered a fossilized skull. And guys, this wasn't an animal. This was an archaic human ancestor. It proved that way before modern humans showed up, ancient hominids were surviving right there in the jungle. So you might be wondering, who exactly was this Narmada human? Well, scientists believe they had a very athletic build, super heavy jaws, and really prominent protruding eyebrows. They didn't have complex language yet, so they were likely communicating through basic gestures and sounds. But what they did have was technology. They crafted these pear-shaped stone hand axes. They'd hold these stones tight in their fists, using them as both knives and hammers. I mean, just imagine the sheer courage it took to hunt giant beasts with nothing but a rock in your fist, locked in close combat. Because they were facing down these massive beasts. Prehistoric hunting was a brutal, brutal reality. It was all mud and close-quarters combat, which naturally led to some pretty severe injuries. But out of that harsh reality came something amazing: empirical prehistoric medicine. The evidence suggests they didn't just cross their fingers and hope to survive. No, they were actually applying specific muds or leaves to stop bleeding, and they figured out how to use natural splints to support broken bones. They were surviving through logic and observation, not just blind luck. Which brings us to Section 3, the Toba volcanic winter, the day the sky literally turned black. Just as these early humans were really getting a handle on their environment, a massive, catastrophic threat was brewing thousands of kilometers away over in Indonesia. Around 74,000 years ago, a supervolcano called Toba completely blew its top, triggering a volcanic winter. The explosion was so incredibly massive that a toxic cloud of volcanic ash blew all the way across the ocean and blanketed India. Within hours, the blue sky completely vanished. It was pitch black during the day. And then this toxic white death started falling from the sky. It wasn't snow, it was suffocating, freezing volcanic ash. Rivers turned into thick, toxic mud, forests died off, and tropical India was suddenly plunged into freezing temperatures. Now, for the longest time, scientists believed this event just totally wiped out early humans in India. But discoveries down in Jalaparam, Andhra Pradesh, completely debunked that myth. Researchers dug down and found engineered stone tools not just below the deep layers of ash, but remarkably right above it as well. Think about what that means. It's a testament to incredible human resilience. Our ancestors weren't wiped out. They adapted to this apocalyptic wasteland and somehow they survived. All right, Section 4, Homo sapiens arrive in India. We're talking about the great coastal migration out of Africa. So while Toba was wreaking absolute havoc over in Asia, Africa was getting hit by severe droughts. Facing starvation, our direct ancestors, Homo sapiens, were basically forced into a desperate mass migration. The route was incredibly treacherous. First, they had to cross the dangerous waters of the Bab el Mandeb, which is very fittingly known as the Gate of Tears. Then, instead of wandering inland to die in the deserts, they made a brilliant choice. They hugged the harsh, rocky Arabian coastline. This was a total game changer because the ocean became their savior. By surviving on a diet of crabs, shellfish, and fish, they were loading up on omega-3 rich seafood, and scientists actually believe this diet gave a massive boost to their brain development. And then they walked. Not for a few months or a year, but for generations, thousands of years inching their way toward fertile lands. And finally, about 65,000 years ago, Homo sapiens made it. They arrived in India, reaching the incredibly lush green valleys of the Sindhu and Saraswati rivers. Nature had actually healed. And in this wild, incredible twist of fate, the very same volcanic ash from the Toba eruption that had caused so much mass death had, over tens of thousands of years, broken down and transformed into some of the absolute most fertile soil on the planet. This brings us to Section 5, From Caves to Cities, the actual dawn of human civilization. So these wanderers who were used to the open plains of Africa now had to figure out how to survive in the deadly, labyrinth-like jungles of India. They desperately needed shelter, and they found it right in central India. The Bhimbetka caves essentially acted as natural rock palaces for them. They offered absolutely vital protection from the brutal monsoon rains and the massive predators roaming outside. They also mastered controlled fire, which gave them nighttime security. If a fire was blazing at the cave entrance, predators generally kept their distance. But it went way beyond just physical safety. These fireplaces essentially became the very first social media hubs. Sitting around that campfire is really where humans learned to communicate and trust each other, sparking early social cohesion. And on those cave walls, they started creating beautiful red cave paintings, reflecting their daily lives and their earliest emotions. They were finally doing more than just surviving. They were finding meaning. And as their environment evolved, their tech did too. Think back to those primitive, heavy, blunt hand axes that required you to get dangerously close to massive animals. Well, they eventually went through a massive technological revolution and created microliths. These were tiny, razor-sharp stone blades that they figured out how to attach to wood and bone to make spears, bows, and arrows. Now they could hunt faster prey from a much safer distance. It was an absolute game changer for their survival. Now, I want us to fast forward a bit. Just consider this highly specific ratio, 4:2:1. This isn't just a random set of numbers. This is the astonishingly standardized structural brick ratio of the Indus Valley civilization. What that ratio really represents is an absolute masterstroke of urban planning. Cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro were using these exact standardized bricks across thousands of miles. That employs a level of logical, organized governance that is just mind-blowing for the time. And their engineering? It's phenomenal. They had fully covered main drainage systems, which, let's be real, some modern cities still struggle with today. They used advanced waterproofing techniques in structures like the Great Bath. They even designed their house stores to open into back alleys instead of the main roads, just to ensure privacy and keep the street dust out. Their street designs were literally built to actively mitigate flooding. It is straight up a masterclass in ancient engineering. Finally, let's move to our last section today, The Sinoli chariot mystery and how it is actively rewriting ancient Indian history. Just when historians thought they had the timeline all figured out, some stunning archaeological excavations in 2005 and 2018 completely shook up the established narrative. The discoveries made in Sinoli, Uttar Pradesh, were absolutely groundbreaking. Carbon dating places these finds at roughly 4,000 years ago. Archaeologists unearthed these highly advanced antenna swords, and most shockingly of all, copper-plated two-wheeled chariots. Now, for decades, the standard textbook narrative was that horses and chariots were brought into India much, much later. But this discovery totally flips the script, proving the definitive existence of a highly advanced warrior society right there in the Ganga-Yamuna Doab region, way earlier than anyone previously thought.
Naturally, this has sparked a massive global academic debate. What do these chariots actually mean? Do they validate the Aryan migration theory? Do they represent a purely indigenous, independent technological development right there in India? Or do they belong to the warriors described in the epic era of the Mahabharata? It's really crucial to understand that we are impartially looking at the source material here. Historians and scientists around the world are fiercely debating this right now. History is rarely black and white, and these chariots are solid proof that our understanding of the past is constantly evolving.
Which leaves us with this profound question to wrap up our explainer today. Who exactly were the warriors of Sinoli? It seems like every single time we dig a little deeper into the earth, a completely new truth emerges, challenging everything we thought we knew. The true depths of ancient history are clearly still waiting to be unearthed. So what do you think lies buried next? Thank you so much for exploring with us today. Keep questioning and keep learning.